Hello and welcome to Kellett News. My name is Tom Clark, and today our story will be investigating the effectiveness of drought management schemes in regions that differ in levels of development. Droughts are prolonged periods of abnormally low rainfall leading to potential water shortages. As well as this, the social, economic, political, and environmental impacts can be extremely damaging to countries. However, the extent to which a country is affected by a drought depends heavily on its management schemes. We are going to be comparing regions that differ in levels of development to understand whether this difference affects the effectiveness and success of drought management schemes. Firstly, we will be in contact with a resident of Tamworth in New South Wales via our correspondent located in Australia to give us an insight into the success of drought management schemes in a developed nation. Followed shortly by an interview between our correspondent in the Sahel region and a government official of Niger to bring light to the effectiveness of the drought management schemes in the Sahel. Now to Sophia in New South Wales.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, my name is Sophia and I'm here with Lexi, who's a farmer here in Tamworth. Tamworth is one of the areas experiencing extreme drought conditions due to the big dry or the millennium drought we have been seeing here in Australia for the past few years. We have seen such severe conditions due to the El Nino effect, which has caused warm water to be pushed onto the nation's east coast. This, in conjunction with the subtropical location of Australia, where areas of dry, sinking air and high pressure are very common, has resulted in extensive rainfall shortages and hot, dry conditions. Hopefully, Lexi will be able to give us a deeper insight into what it's been like to live in drought conditions for such an extended period of time and what has been the most helpful when dealing with this situation. So, Lexi, how has the drought impacted your day-to-day life?
The drought has affected my life in many aspects. It has led to a lack of income for myself and my fellow farmers. The lack of rainfall has led to a decrease in crop growth and the inability to provide my livestock with adequate water supply. This has led to the underproduction of my crops and the unfortunate death of my livestock. I've had to sell my machinery and land, and my family and I are considering migrating elsewhere. The increase in food costs and water tax has led to financial difficulties for my family and I. I am unable to grow my own food for my family as a result of the soil depletion. The drought has made it difficult for me to carry on providing for my family in the way I previously had.
That must be so hard. Has the government provided you with any help or advice regarding water shortages?
The Australian government assistance is something that I've been researching into to help provide my family with some source of income during these difficult times. The Rural Financial Counselling Service is another resource that the government has provided us farmers. It helps provide advice and help towards financial counselling, developing an action plan, and allowing me to access government assistance schemes. The government is really trying their best to help provide me with the help and advice I need, and the resources they have provided have been a useful guidance.
That's great. Has there been anything you've changed within your lifestyle to adapt to the drought conditions?
The implementation of water restrictions has meant I've had to limit my water usage towards domestic things such as sprinklers, and I began to store my own water in case of national shortages. For the crops that have survived, I've adapted my farming techniques by diversifying my production risks. I've begun to seed a large variety of crops in hopes that they will survive these harsh conditions. By using soil probes to test for moisture, I am also able to make educated decisions on when and where to plant.
Interesting. Have any NGOs or external organizations assisted you with the difficulties brought on by the drought?
I believe that a number of charities have contributed to helping our situation. I heard that the National Drought Coordinator, Major General Stephen Day, said on the news that 30 million is being given out to farmers and their families. My friends have told me that the country's Women Association and National Farmers Federation have been great at making sure everyone who needs help is getting it. I've also seen Australian Red Cross, Rural Aid and Drought Angels really helping to raise awareness and donations in order to help people that are really struggling.
Finally, what have you felt has been the most impactful type of management? Do you think that these will help to prevent future droughts from being as devastating?
I think the combination of all the different schemes has helped us get back on our feet. I'm not sure if I could just pick one. I think the newly implemented basin plan, along with the government water fund, is going to be key in helping prevent the negative impacts of future droughts. It makes me feel a lot less nervous knowing that the government has planned the construction of different water infrastructure that will help provide affordable water even in times of water scarcity. However, when we were in the midst of the drought, the aid that the Australian government was able to provide us took so much stress off our backs when it came to getting food on the table and paying our bills.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, Lexi. We are now going to be connecting with a reporter in Niger to discuss how the management of droughts in the Sahel region differs to here in Australia. Tom, over to you.
Thanks, Sophia. Good afternoon. Today we're in Niger, an area heavily affected by droughts brought forth by the Sahel region. Today we are going to be speaking to a government official, Kirsten, to discuss how potential problems associated with droughts in Niger, such as increased crop prices, famine and lack of water, are being dealt with, and what the top-down approach consists of. Additionally, we are going to discuss whether or not Niger lack the resources to effectively and efficiently deal with droughts. Firstly, discuss what different schemes you have implemented in relation to water management and conservation and farming techniques in order to reduce the potential consequences of future droughts.
So far, we've implemented several schemes, including the use of stone buns. This is the most widely practiced technique by farmers in sub-Saharan Africa, and it involves forming barriers to slow down water runoff in order to allow rainwater to seep into soil and spread more evenly, but also protects land from periods of heavy rainfall. In addition to this, stone buns make rainwater harvesting and retention possible when we're going through drought to guarantee harvest in order to feed our population. We have also started to rehabilitate valleys, construct small dams, and stabilize water basins where possible. Our water spreading wheels alter basic runoff and sedimentation processes in valleys, optimizing agriculture and minimizing silting. We have over 15 rehabilitated valleys, and each can support thousands of farms across the country. Last but not least, a new method called Zai has been created. This is where pits are dug in herended farmland and is filled with compost and manure. At the start of rainy season, seeds will be planted inside, and the aim is to boost crop productivity by concentrating scarce water and nutrients around the plants.
How are you implementing these schemes? Through training or education?
We've been able to implement these schemes through educating our farmers. Much of this is thanks to the involvement of aid foundations such as the Global Alliance for Resilience and the USAID for coming here to demonstrate and teach locals how these techniques work. Farmers have also been very good in cooperation with them, despite having to give up some traditional farming methods. Working with the World Food Programme has meant that other local villagers have been earning cash or food in return for helping to build dams and dikes, dig zai, and support our works in the implementation of projects to maximize water resources.
Are these schemes being received well by the farmers, and is there evident progress that they are following them?
Just 15 years after stone buns were first established in Niger, we've had an increase in grain yields by more than 40%. As for the 4,371 farms we have in a single valley system here in Niger, the water spreading weirs have successfully ensured that soils are regularly flooded, so the arable land area and yields of rain season crops have increased significantly. Prior to the rehabilitation measures, farms had approximately 0.6 hectares each, but now have about 2.2 hectares each. Millet and sorghum yields have increased on average by 85 to 90% and 25 to 30% respectively. This has been particularly beneficial for reducing the average depth of the water table level in 15 rehabilitated valleys here, which went from 12.5 meters to just 3.5 below the surface. This has widened the variety of crops that farmers can grow, where they used to only be able to grow rain-fed crops. The use of Zai technique alone has better prepared communities across the Sahel, and not just Niger, to withstand drought, especially since the last major dry spell in 2012, which left 18 million people in need of assistance. Crops are able to last longer as well, as they are healthier too. And there have been reports from our farmers saying that they can still feed their family with crops that have been harvested 7 months ago compared to crop grown traditionally, dying after 2 months.
How impactful is the evident lack of resources in relation to manpower and finance to managing these droughts?
We cannot deny that we have faced several setbacks with regards to our lack of local resources. For example, construction costs, especially of the rehabilitated valleys, consumed quite a large portion, but served to be quite profitable at the end. But as mentioned earlier, aid programs greatly supported us in many aspects, including providing temporary income to those who physically installed dams and dug zai, leading to transfers from aid amounting to approximately €231 per family.
How involved are NGOs in their efforts to manage droughts through aid?
As I have commented on earlier, there is a considerate gap between our budget and the resources at our disposal to deal with the impact of droughts. Because of this, we have been dependent on NGOs and their short-term aid, and as a result of their efforts, we were able to deal with the large drought in 2012 more effectively. Across the Sahel region, WaterAid Global works with governments including ours to make clean water, toilets, and hygiene a normal part of daily life for those hardest to reach, from nomadic groups in the desert to fishermen living in banks of the River Niger. The European Commission, ECHO and DevCo, provided €337 million in humanitarian assistance. This is more than a third of the overall aid effort. This funding, with combined efforts of the UN agencies and NGOs, has helped 6.8 million people through food assistance, including 3.4 million who have received livelihood support in the form of cash transfers, paid work, or paid training. Another 3.6 million people have benefited through nutrition programs. This is mainly children and breastfeeding mothers, including 850,000 children suffering from severe acute malnutrition. But in addition to this, in the last 3 years, the World Food Programme has started phasing out food assistance in many parts of our country as our people have been able to become more and more self-sufficient.
Thank you for speaking to us today, Kirsten. Back to the studio. Thank you very much. To conclude today's segment, we have checked in with our correspondents in two regions both affected by droughts, who differ in levels of development. In Niger, an area constantly affected by droughts by the Sahel, and in New South Wales in Australia. Evidently, there are somewhat significant differences in the impacts and responses seen. This is likely due to the differences in development and the nature of drought seen in both locations. In Australia, we've seen extreme efficiency with their management schemes due to successful governance and their ability to help the population with government funding. It is also much easier for droughts to be managed in Australia due to the fact that it is only one country, where in the Sahel, it's a region that encompasses many countries, and therefore approaches in Niger that we have heard from today may differ in other places like Chad. Although countries in the Sahel lack access to this sort of funding and have less effective governance, they have received significantly more aid and assistance from NGOs, which seem to benefit them greatly. Overall, the short-term management presents in regions such as the Sahel are likely to be more beneficial to the highly vulnerable population. However, effective governance and government-funded long-term plans will help to prevent drought from causing severe negative impacts for future generations. And thus, drought management schemes are only slightly more effective in developed countries than developing countries.